let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into it. I see folks from Forest Park here, Bellwood, Oak Park. This is something that the importance of constituent services have come up in some of the town halls that we've done in West Town and on the west side of Chicago. And so I would hope that as we continue the candidates forums, more of the we as a campaign are trying to push other campaigns to talk about what they would do around constituent services. So how I kind of envision this is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. I'll tell you, we will go into some pre-submitted questions. Um, we'll go into some pre-submitted questions that people in the community sent us. And then we want to open the floor for questions for folks who are on the call to ask me directly. So we'll start there. So, like I said, I'm Kina Collins and I'm running to represent you here in the Illinois 7th. My background is in organizing around gun violence prevention work. I'm a lifelong West Sider in the South Austin community, and I got my start in organizing as a child after witnessing gun violence in my community and knowing victims and shooters in my community, quite frankly. And one of the things that I remembered was even as a child was that I really wish that we had elected officials who would come into the community and connect with us after those very traumatic situations. And that really drew and centered my organizing style around constituent services and why it would be important as a public servant to have that. And so my arc of my story went from being a survivor of gun violence to being a advocate and training nonviolent approaches to de-escalating violence in our communities, a public policy expert around common sense gun safety legislation, and then I was selected as executive director of One AIM Illinois, which is one of the largest gun violence prevention nonprofits in the state. Leading that, and I also served on the Biden-Harris transition team, advising senior leaders in the White House around common sense gun safety legislation on the Biden-Harris transition team. And so that's a little bit about my background. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer that. So, Nicole, if we could start on some of the pre-submitted questions from community, I would love to jump into that.
Absolutely. Okay, so the first question that I have is what steps would you take to ensure community members felt like they could access you when needed?
Hmm. So this is a very important one because I do think that inaccessibility, once again, is a huge issue in our district. And so we have to open it up in a variety of ways. One, this is going to be important because I believe that once we win in March, our district, whoever ends up winning actually, has to become a resource hub for rapid response. We are seeing an uptick of federal presence through ICE agents and other people across our district. And so I would like to create a direct hotline outside of the regular number where our staffers would be able to answer questions quickly, even if it's just like a texting back and forth, a texting program. So adding technology to the way that we could rapidly respond to constituents in the district is going to be a priority. It is a very large district with a lot of diverse communities and neighborhoods in the district. And I think that that's one of the ways. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go, Leslie. A second way, and is a more traditional way, is that we have to up and make more frequently town halls. One of the things that we haven't been able to do in this district, I think, efficiently is make town halls accessible, and that means ADA accessible and also culturally competent, right? So having translators in the room during these town halls to help people understand what is going on during the town halls, and we haven't had them frequently enough. And so the commitment that our office wants to make is that we would do that monthly in the district, Your representative has weeks where they would be in Washington, D.C., and then they have time that they're in the actual district. We would want to utilize that time in the district to host those town halls, even just to connect with constituents. So, technology, frequent town halls, virtual town halls like this, right? Because everybody can't make it in person. And I think it just doesn't make sense for us not to make it as accessible as possible for people who may have to work or people who are stay-at-home parents who cannot, physically come. Other people just physically can't come to certain locations. Um, so we want to make it as accessible as possible. And I do think that we should have town halls for the western suburbs and town halls for in within the city. Because I do oftentimes hear, even on the campaign trail, different issues that are important to different portions of the district. And I do think that that is going to require us to listen to folks who are within that community. So I hope that answers y'all's questions. And then if the people who are on are listening and you're thinking of suggestions to give our campaign, please, we would also love that feedback. But I think that that was a point of frustration for me with Representative Davis's office is that they were not as tech savvy, or they would plan town halls during times where people were at work or could not attend. And it was incredibly frustrating. Or we would get a notification in an email or some type of way 24 hours before the town hall. So we have to make sure that we're giving ample time for people to block off that time to come to the town halls, to answer those questions and tell us what's up. Here's the final way that I would like to connect with constituents. Year-round deep canvassing. So one of the big issues that Democrats are having right now is that there's a disconnect between the electorate and their representative. And I think that that frustration is coming because politicians only come around during election time. And what we need to be doing is that when you get a door knock from a political organization or a political candidate, it should not only be when we need a vote. Our office wants to do an organizing model where we knock on the doors and we phone bank to constituents in our district just to ask them, do you need anything? How can we help you? How can we better service you? Is there a way that we can improve our office right now? Right. And so if you open that line of communication, that opens up a space of going from just governing to a co-governance model with the community where they're actually putting accountability metrics in place, you're answering the tough questions in real time, and you're providing services for them and educating them about what the congressional office could actually do. A lot of people don't know what your representative could actually do. And so, as we see this administration, the Trump administration, cut Medicaid, cut things like SNAP, it's important that we go to the voters and let them know that that is something that our office can handle or help them with or connect them to the resources that they need. And so, deep canvassing year round, except on the off years, not just during election years, is extremely important priority. It's going to be an extreme important priority to me in my office. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. And just in bringing up, Davis and whatnot, the next question actually feeds into that is what would you be able to offer that would be different from what we are currently receiving in terms of services?
I mean, I think it's just, so I'll give you an example. And, we're hearing a lot of candidates talk about, and this was something that we brought up back in 2020 when we ran against Congressman Davis, was that there is a deep death gap that exists between downtown Chicago and more working class Black communities in our district. And I think that there's a strong case that could be made about the resources federally and locally that we could really advocate for to close that death gap and chip away. One of the things that I proposed is in my first 100 days, putting together a healthcare and life expectancy task force, which would include environmentalists, physicians, students, activists, parents, folks across the district who could help us come up with the recommendations to chip away at this 30-year life gap that exists. And that's what I mean when I say a co-governing model, is that we're not just coming up with the solutions because we do not think that we are the smartest people in the room at the Collins campaign. Oh, we operate well, we're the least smartest in the room, and we need the most help from the community because they know the solutions to it. And so I think good leadership is raising your hand and asking for that help. And I do think that we can build that out. So that I think is what's not happening is that for a lot of the crises that exist in Illinois 7, there's not a lot of space for people to come into the congressional office and really feel like they're contributing to chipping away at those issues. And so, and that's not the only task force that we would need, right? We would need an LGBTQ task force. We would need a senior caucus. We would need, I think a parents caucus, a students caucus, right? We need the ability for folks to come in and really educate us about where the gaps are and then utilize the tools in the government to help dismantle whatever or provide a solution rather to whatever that problem is. And so I don't think that that is happening right now. I'm not going to say that it has never happened, but in the last decade, when we've seen an uptick in community organizing and protests and everything that's happening in our community, I have not felt an open line of communication between Representative Davis's office and community groups. And then the second thing is, I think that our district, Nicole, I've brought this up several times. We know that a Democrat is going to win this seat. Our district is extremely Democratic. As a matter of fact, we are the most Democratic district in the Midwest and the fifth most Democratic district in the nation. We vote 34 points above the Republicans. So we should be turning Illinois 7 into an organizing hub, right? That means we could be outsourcing the volunteers and folks in our district on the political side to go into battleground states and help build out political power in the Midwest. We could serve as a national model on how other super democratic districts can do it. And so it's not just the constituent service piece, it's how do we actually build power in our district and distribute that power. And what our office could do is work in tandem with groups like independent political organizations like the 25th Ward IPO, the 11th Ward IPO. We could build up precinct captains, block club presidents, right? We can start an entire voter registration drive for young people in our district. I mean, we could really inject power back into Illinois 7, which is an extremely diverse district, an extremely young district, and I just think there's so much that we could do that's not being done right now.
I couldn't agree more. Um, so the next question is it's about the district. This is a very diverse district from African American neighborhoods to Chinatown, from sleepy suburbs to the bustling loop. How would you ensure that you could address the concerns of all of your constituents and that your office and policies are reflecting their priorities?
Yeah, that's a really great one. The special thing about Illinois 7 is that the folks, we are a microcosm of the United States. We have some of the wealthiest communities in our district and some of the most working class communities in our district, and a variety, a myriad of cultures and races and ethnicities and religions, etc. And the beautiful thing about our district is that people know which communities are being left behind and which are not. They can see it when they live in the western suburbs and they drive 10 miles east. I mean, excuse me, 10 minutes east into the west side, and they go, oh, wow, this looks completely different. And, crossing Austin and Lake. It looks very different, right? So people can tell what is happening in these communities and which communities are being divested in, and they're voting in such a way that they want their representative to pour the resources into the areas that need it the most. Right. And somebody mentioned it in the chat. People do want to make sure that their voices are heard and that their concerns are being heard. And I believe that as long as people are feeling like they are part of the conversation and they're part of the coalition building that's happening, they do not mind us pouring resources into Bellwood, Maywood, West Side, South Side, to make sure that those communities are lifted up. But they do want to know, where those dollars are going and what is the return on investment on that. And so we don't have a problem here in Illinois 7 with people downtown saying that schools should be invested in on the west side because they know that schools have been shut down on the west side of Chicago. And I'm very fortunate to be running in a district like that. And that has been one of the biggest surprises. When I first decided to run, there were political consultants who told me people in Oak Park are not going to care about what people in Greektown or North Lawndale care about. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The parents in River Forest and Oak Park do care about the children in North Lawndale and West Garfield Park, and they do want to see them survive. It comes up frequently. Why are there no grocery stores in Austin and people have to come to Oak Park to grocery shop? That comes up a lot from Oak Park residents. So we're fortunate that we can focus on communities that have been divested, and we will be supported and anchored by the communities that are fortunate to have not been divested, and working in tandem with those neighborhoods. I think the key though is if we're saying that we're coalition building, we have to pull those folks in. And all of those really amazing organizing models that have worked other places, that knowledge can be shared in that coalition building to communities that are developing their organizing models. And so I think that this is a question about communicating and building bridges and coalition.
Awesome. I love that answer. So the last one that I have here, and then we'll open up the floor, is how would you work in tandem with state and city officials at the local level to address our concerns and with mechanisms that could hold elected officials accountable, who don't share your vision of accountability and accessibility?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, first and foremost, we come in with a spirit of collaboration, whether we agree logically or not on things, because really, when we win, Nicole, I'm not going to be the representative for the people who voted for me. I'm the representative for all of the Illinois 7th district. And so my number one priority is representative democracy for Illinois 7. And that means sitting down with people and putting the self-interest of the communities and the voters and the constituents of this district at the forefront, regardless of how I feel about the politics of who I'm sitting next to, right? And I'm very clear on that. And I want everybody on the call to know that I'm very clear on that. This is not an ego trip for our office or what our administration would do. Secondly, I think how do we stay and work with the multi, levels of government is that we have to get on their schedule. So when I come to those monthly town halls that I'm promising you all, we got to have a report from the governor's office. We got to have a report from the Cook County Board. We have to have a report from, our aldermen and our village trustees about whatever is germane to that conversation because they're working on the local level and we're working in tandem and collaboration with them on the federal level. And so, one, I would invite those folks to our town halls to answer questions specifically and then get them, connected to the constituents in that room. And two, if they can't make it, we want to make sure that we're giving ample enough time for people to ask questions and pre-submit questions like they did tonight so that we could get those questions answered, and have a productive town hall and a productive meeting. Everybody should walk out of these information sessions feeling like their question got answered or that it will be answered in a sufficient amount of time. So I plan to get on the schedule of these elected officials, have personal relationships with them, make sure that my staff knows who's on their staff, and that we're having efficient and open flowing communication between the offices. But most importantly, that we're providing every opportunity for these elected officials to get in front of constituents. I know that federal seats often garner a lot more attention than the local seats, but we know that the local seats they're really getting to the work, right, of getting this stuff done. And a lot of these issues under this Trump administration are going to get thrown down to the local level. And it's going to be important that we are in tight relationships so that we can get the resources to the community as quickly as possible. Now, as far as accountability metrics go, I think that this is also an important relationship when we talk about co-governance, that we educate our residents about what their elected officials are doing and what they are not doing, what they have voted on and what they are not voting on, right? So that they have that information. And the good news about the age that we're in is that we don't have to wait for the news or the media to report on that. We could do that right here on our phones, right? We could tell that narrative on our phones. And so I think that the accountability metric for our office is going to be one that we also extend to other elected officials and we welcome them to be in a co-governance model. When they make decisions, did you ask the community about making that decision? And so, if they didn't, I think the community we want to provide the opportunity for them to answer that to the community. And so, that's how I think that that accountability metric could be set. But if it's one thing I want y'all to take away from this answer is that, we are coming in with a spirit of collaboration and my entire career, whether it was fighting for healthcare equity, fighting for women and girls, and keeping Illinois a haven state for reproductive health care, I have had to work with people who think of gun violence prevention work, right? I organized in Louisiana, people who love their guns down in Louisiana. It has my entire career has been working with folks who think vastly different than me. And I think I also share a very unique experience being a young Black woman where we experience it the harshest when people don't do their jobs. And so, and you still have to come to the table, you still have to show up. And so that's the commitment that I can make to people is that I'm going to show up regardless of how I feel about it, how tough the conversation is. And we want to make sure that we're educating our constituents. Was that the last
Ama
question, Nicole?
yes, amazing as always. Um,
Um, okay, so if I did want to give the opportunity for people on the call, if you have any questions, and I mean, it could be any policy question or any question about my background that you may want to have. I want to open the floor for y'all to ask that. Oh, did I do my job? No. Oh, I see folks coming off.
I just got an invitation to unmute myself. Was
Okay,
that
that will help.
okay? I just posted a question in the chat earlier, and I'm just going to repeat it here. I'm curious who you see as the top competitors in the primary race this spring, and also what you see as setting yourself apart from those candidates.
That's really great. So I think that we cannot underestimate. I mean, as some of you have probably read, there is a $2.8 million drop that has come in from APAC for one of their candidates. You can't underestimate that, which means we have to crank up our, ground game in order to just keep up with that. So I do think that this seat traditionally and modern politics in Illinois has been held by West Siders and people who have large bases on the West Side in the western suburbs. And this is something that we've talked to other progressives about in the race. is that it's not a personal thing, it's a mathematical thing. Our district is a plurality African American district. The largest vote share in this district is Black women who go out to the polls in large numbers. And so both the elected officials in the race, LaShawn and Melissa, would probably be our direct competitors. We come in with the thing that separates me is that I'm the only candidate in this race who's run the span of the district multiple times. So every corner of this district that you go to, people know who I am and they know the brand and the platform that I've run on because we've run on that platform several primaries. And so we've established ourselves in that way in the progressive lane, in the lane of people who feel like they're on the outskirts of politics, being a non-traditional candidate for the seat and not being an elected official. And so we come in with a lot of name recognition, almost as much as the elected officials who are in this race. And all of the polling has indicated that. And I happen to be a West Sider, right? So where we have traditionally done well, I think that you couldn't have run against a bigger opponent than Danny Davis because he was a titan and, Black politics in a district like ours. He had been an alderman, a Cook County commissioner. I mean, he had really done it all in the district. Um, and so as I stated, that's really what sets us apart is that we did not wait for the safe time to jump in. We knew that these were critical fights happening at the national level. I did feel that the Democratic Party establishment did not have a clear plan to stop the hemorrhaging of young people, women and people of color from leaving the party, and then that happened in November, right? We lost the popular vote for the first time in 20 years. We lost the House, we lost the Senate, we lost the White House, and 26 out of the 50 state legislatures right now are GOP led. And these were things that, our campaign was bringing the alarm about back in 2019. Um, and so in that way, I think we've really set ourselves apart. But what I can also tell you is I'm very proud of these campaigns that are running. Like they're running on really strong platforms and standing on their values. I just think from a time point of view and from a realistic point of view, um, voters don't typically research 13 candidates. They typically they typically pick like two or three of the names that they know, and then they go off of how they're feeling in that primary and what direction they would like the district to go in. And so LaShawn K. Ford's campaign, Melissa's campaign, and my campaign have come up a lot in many different rooms and many different. I mean, people can't really talk about the race without bringing our campaigns up. And so, in that way, I think it really sets us apart from some of the other candidates who are less known, but are, and for all intents purposes, they're running really great campaigns.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up question?
Mhm.
What motivated you? Is it like two campaigns ago or three campaigns ago to primary Danny Davis?
That's a great question. So I was working as a national organizer for Physicians for a National Health Program, which is where I was organizing 20,000 doctors and medical students and training them to be advocates for a single payer universal healthcare system because our country is the only developed country without a universal healthcare system. And one of the things that I had to do was power rank which congressional members were taking corporate PAC money from big pharmaceutical companies that were lobbying to stop the Medicare for All bill. And I found out Congressman Davis was taking a ton of money
Mm,
from them. And I asked him to return the money. He said no. And I said, okay, I'm going to primary you. And it wasn't just me, it was other groups in the district who
mhm.
had to do some little convincing of me to run against him because, as I said, Congressman Davis had been my congressman since I was 5 years old. That's the only congressperson that I had ever known. And so it was a very tough decision. And then we felt that we were making some inroads because when we started, would get like 73% of the Democratic primary vote, no matter who was in the race. He was getting 73% of the vote. And now that he's retiring after these several runs that we've done to him, he's barely getting 50% of the vote. So we really brought the district along to say you do not have to just pick the incumbent in this race. You can look at other options in this race. And I think that that's going to pay back dividends in this upcoming primary for voters.
Thank you. I love that answer. I have one
Thank
more
you.
question, if I may.
You can.
It's it's come to my attention that crypto is a big deal and people's stance on crypto is important, at least for advocates for the crypto industry. Where do you stand?
I think that crypto is unregulated and it's dangerous. I think from an environmental standpoint, we have not done enough studies about how it is damaging the environment, number one. And number two, the lack of regulation on it is scary. As I said, my background is in gun violence prevention work. My entire career as a survivor, as an advocate, as a public policy expert, has been around keeping guns off the illicit market. And crypto is one of those places where it's hard to trace back
Hmm.
where these guns are bought. They are trading, I mean, look at the Epstein files as they've come out, right? There's a lot of nefarious things going on where if we cannot trace it back, there's no way to hold people to account or bring justice to the victims
Hmm.
of these things. And so I have a very strong stance against it. We take a no corporate PAC pledge in our campaign. And as you can see, it's a mounting call to federally regulate crypto more, which is why they are stepping into races more because they want to elect people who are going to back off of that conversation. And it's the same thing with AI, right? We need to federally regulate it. And so I have a very strong stance on it. And I think that Illinois 7 is, once again, Democratic enough and left leaning enough that we would have a lot of support across this district to mount that challenge against the crypto industry.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Jeffrey, I saw you come off. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for this forum. This is very educational for me. I want to learn about all the candidates. Like you said, there's 13 of them, so it's like it's just difficult to do, but I'm glad that we're doing this now, and I appreciate hearing more, learning more about you. My question would be, so I think it's really one really important thing is to how you, my question is, how would you handle homelessness and poverty? And are there certain programs that you believe would be helpful to add to, you know, low income environments in our district? And how would you be able to, like, what ideas do you have for connecting those programs together and forming coalitions? We've talked a lot about coalitions and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, I think it's just, these are very important issues. So, as far as, how I'm just wondering how you feel about um, building more social programs, in low income environments and how you will go about doing that.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That's a great question. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you about our platform and for showing up. So my political praxis and the foundation of it is not that I come from some prestigious political background. My parents are manufacturing union workers, right, on the West Side. And I have family members who are domestic workers. I have family members who have been unhoused. I have family members who've been on the brink of being unhoused. It is a huge, we are seeing mass gentrification across our district. One of the things that I just talked about at a house party that I just did in our district was about the property tax hike that just happened here in the city of Chicago, really everywhere. But on the west side, some of the communities in North Lawndale and West Garfield Park, for example, saw a 136% increase on their property tax. And to me, if you ask me, that's a displacement tax. They are balancing, our government is balancing the budget off the back of working poor and working class people. And it ties into the issue that we have of the death gap in our district, which is everybody across this district almost virtually um, is one illness away from being unhoused or being, unemployed. And so all of these issues are interconnected. And on that respect and in that regard, I view the homelessness crisis and those who are unhoused as a public health issue. And we have to view it that way. And so we have great programs in our district, like Housing Forward, for example, where I would work very closely with them. In our district to advise on what we're doing, but also to lobby with them on the state level on what they're pushing for. There's the Lift the Ban coalition across Illinois, where they're trying to make it where landlords cannot continue to raise rents. So people can actually afford to live in the city of Chicago and across the state of Illinois. And so that's the political muscle that we want to use in our office. Of course, on the federal level, I think, we're going to have to take the Trump administration to court for a lot of what they're doing and gutting HUD and gutting things like Section 3, gutting things like Section 202, where people could use, Medicaid to pay their rent, and protect our seniors. We need to be fighting and advocating for those things, but you also have to be educated. So that means I have to surround myself with some of the best housing experts in the district, and we're really fortunate that we live in a district where that is a top priority. 19% of our district is living below the poverty line. So it is higher than the national average. And we know that if issues like healthcare and public safety are the number one concerns for people in our district, then we got to get this housing crisis under control. We have to give opportunity and build up a strong local economy. For that to be a part of our DNA our political DNA as an office and as an administration. Furthermore, on the federal level, we need to protect and actually utilize correctly things like opportunity zones where we can build in our district. We have to hold corporations and organizations and companies accountable through community benefits agreements with the community before they build in our community, that they actually come and speak to people and that they carve out something that is a part of our self-interest. Why do you get to build and make money in our community while people are being displaced? You have to guarantee us that if you're building in our community, our folks are not going to get pushed out in the process of that. So there's a lot of legal avenues that we could take, Jeffrey, to both expand housing, work with the experts, be educated by the experts, advocate with the experts downstate, um, legally, and do that. But I think also this is about how do we defend people in this moment where we're seeing a gutting of these social programs. And so that's why I think y'all need to elect an organizer. That's my pitch. That's my theory of the case, is that every representative across this country should live in the poorest neighborhoods in their district. I live in the South Austin community. I see it with my own eyes, how it feels that I can't get a glass of clean water out of the tap because of the lead, right? Because I can't just walk to the grocery store. It's easier to get a handgun than it is to get fresh produce in our neighborhoods. And there are no schools, right? Everything has been shuttered down. There are not enough banks, right, across the district. So just the basic things that make communities tick, and housing is the number one thing. You cannot build up strong communities if there's not housing. And if companies and corporations think that they're just going to push families, working class families, out of our district without a fight, you will not steamroll over me like that. There has to be community benefits agreements. We have to protect opportunity zones. We have to work with the experts. And that's what I plan to do in my office.
Thank you for that. I just have one more quick question and then yeah, so I'm actually a volunteer for Housing Forward. So I guess, well, two small questions. One would be how can we get more organizations like Housing Forward into the low income environments in Chicago, neighborhoods on the west side? Uh,
Mm.
that will be like, I guess I'm just wondering on the how part of that, what
Yeah.
your view is. But then and this will be my last question, and this relates to that, is how do you feel you would work with Brandon Johnson on like the Bring Chicago Home campaigns and the different types of things that he's doing, and trying to like how will those things interconnect for you? And
So a couple of things. One, I think that organizations like Housing For, I didn't know you were a volunteer. See, look at the
yeah,
amazing work y'all are doing, right? So as a West Sider, I do know the work of Housing Forward, right? Because y'all have been doing amazing work for years. I think that we need to come in and have those teach-ins, right? Of what strategies have worked for groups like Housing Forward. People will be interested, but we have to organize the people where they are. And what we don't see, what doesn't get talked about enough about the West Side, South Sides, and communities that are like that, are like divested like ours, is that people are just trying to make it day to day. So it's not that they don't have the desire to organize around these things. It's that building power is them exerting more energy sometimes than they can even hold, right? Considering all that they're doing. And so in that regard and in that respect, I think it would be great to have Housing Forward come in and do teach-ins on what has worked for y'all. Secondly, I know Brandon personally. Brandon was our commissioner. And, Brandon, it was Austin night. He's my neighbor here in the Austin community. And what we did in the last election cycle, Jeffrey, was I put Bring Chicago Home in our actual script when we were going door to door. Right? So as I was telling people to vote for me, I was also telling Chicagoans to vote for Bring Chicago Home. And so in those ways where we can, where we're building power, we need to lift up other folks as well. And on when we get elected, of course, I'll work closely with Brandon's, office. I know most of the people in Brandon's office. I'm actually serving. He appointed me on the inaugural reparations task force in City Hall. So we have a great working relationship just from an organizing perspective already, and that will naturally flow once I'm elected.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank
Mhm.
you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm reading some. Yeah, Sarah's in. Thank you, Leslie, for bringing that up. Sarah's in's focused specifically on folks dealing with domestic violence. That's another issue with housing, a layer that we saw increase when COVID happened, right? We saw that people who had to shelter in place with their abusers, it's a public health risk, right? Especially if they had guns in the household. Women are 4 times more likely to die in a domestic dispute if their partner has a gun. And so, having the knowledge of things like that, and once again, working in groups and organizations like Sarah Inn, for example, great organizations to work with. I have a lot of friends who work at Sarah's Inn that volunteer there and who would be willing to help us on day one. I did see another question that was interesting at the top. I think it was you, Leslie, who asked about how many staff can we hire? Um, no, I think those are two different organizations, Mara. Um, so there are like 18 congressional positions that happen between and actually, in our follow-up email, we can actually send you all of those. But we have an actual like district manager. You have a scheduler. You have other positions that you get allotted a certain amount of money to hire people in the district. And how we would want to model that is obviously we have a really big district, super diverse district. We would want to have 4 regions across Illinois 7, which would be western suburbs, west side, downtown, and south side. And so we would have to hire a lot of coordinators, community coordinators across the district, but you'll have your legislative aide folks like that, your veterans affairs person who would handle those things. And you can also hire other people from your political arm. Um, that are outside of that can also do constituent services outside of the government side, which your campaign would pay for, right? Or your political organization would pay for. And so we are gonna do comprehensive, team, not just what's allotted to us in the congressional office. Um, okay. I think if did anybody else have any other questions? Okay, because we're coming up on time. So, I would just like to close out and just say that this has been an honor of a lifetime to run in this district and meet all of the wonderful people across Illinois 7 who are just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I think that we have to get back to the basics of what makes our party strong, what makes our political organization strong, what make our community strong. And I think that those things include people being able to be heard, to contribute to the conversation, and to develop leaders, right? Ella Baker is one of my favorite American organizers. And she said that we should be in a grassroots, not a grass tops model of organizing. And what that means is, and she also said, strong people don't need strong leaders. And what that means is when you build up great leaders in the community, it's not just all reliant on you to do it, but that we could build these leaders up across Illinois 7 to represent their communities. And I believe that, right? As I said, in my friend circle, and as I take this role as your next congresswoman, I want to be the least smartest person in the group. I want to be surrounded around folks who know what they're talking about, and not in the traditional sense, right? That doesn't mean just college educated or, all of this, work experience. It means people who are directly impacted. And those people providing the solutions to some of the pain points of what it means to be in a government right now that is slashing the protections in the civil rights and civil liberties that that folks have fought so hard for us to enjoy now. And so, whoever gets elected into this seat, we know that it's not going to be a snap of a finger. We are in for the fight of our lives. It's going to take years to undo a lot of what they've already done. But what better time than to start now? And if not us, then who would do it? And so I feel very honored and proud about that. And early voting has started. So I hope folks are getting their voter guides together. We will send a follow-up email with some of the stuff that we talked about in this call. And if you have any questions, please reach out. We will continue to host events leading up to Election Day. We're feeling very strong as a campaign as we talk to more voters. And if you want to get plugged in and volunteer and you've made up your mind and you think we're the candidate, we would love to have you come on and help us. So thank you all so much for being here and looking forward to connecting with y'all again on the trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a nice